Leonard Fournette was one of the most dominant players I ever saw at the collegiate level. He was clearly head and shoulders from a physical standpoint above the others. Well, maybe besides Reuben Foster. He was projected to be an elite running back at the NFL level, but it didn't work out for him. Fournette is currently a free agent at the age of 29. So what happened? Raised in the 7th Ward of New Orleans by his parents Leonard Jr. and Lord, Fournette grew up in a troubled area. It was often affected by violence and gang activity, especially after Hurricane Katrina hit in 2005. It ripped through New Orleans when he was 10 years old. His family was even forced to live under a bridge for 5 days. He would eventually go to St. Augustine High School, standing at 6'1", 226 pounds. Fournette was already the size of an NFL running back, and he proved it. Fournette ran for over 1,700 yards and 22 touchdowns as a freshman. Scholarship offers poured in. Coaches flocked from Alabama, Georgia, and LSU, and just about every other program in the nation wanted him. His strength allowed him to run over defenders, and his vision helped elude them. Still, it was his speed for a power back that was remarkable, as he ran the 100-meter-yard dash in 10.68 seconds. That truly set him apart. Fournette finished his high school career with over 7,600 rushing yards and 88 rushing touchdowns, winning Gatorade Louisiana Football Player of the Year in 2012 and 2013. Considered the best running back prospect of his class, Fournette was one of the most highly recruited players ever to come out of Louisiana. ESPN ranked him as the #1 overall recruit in the class of 2014. During the Under Armour All-American game, Fournette announced his decision, as he decided to stay home. Fournette's college career was preceded by very high expectations and hype, as he was often called the next Adrian Peterson. In his collegiate debut against the Wisconsin Badgers, Fournette ran for 18 yards on 8 carries. After the game, Tigers head coach Les Miles downplayed the Fournette hype, as he said this, quote, "First games are not to be comparable to his 30th game," and he also said this, "Expectations are unrealistic." In his second game against Sam Houston State, Fournette rushed for 92 yards on 13 attempts and scored his first collegiate rushing touchdown against number 3 Ole Miss, who led the nation in stopping the run. Fournette rushed for 23 times for 113 yards, to go along with 2 receptions for 41 yards. Simply put, Fournette lived up to the hype as a freshman. He finished with over 1,000 rushing yards and averaged 5.5 yards a carry his freshman season, but his sophomore season was truly one for the ages. In his first 7 games, Fournette had rushed for over 150 yards. He had 4 games where he rushed for over 200 yards. I mean, nobody was trying to tackle this man. If they did, he would just embarrass them. Fournette set school records with his 1,953 rushing yards and 22 rushing touchdowns. With an average of 162 yards per game, he won the NCAA rushing title, awarded to the player with the highest rushing yards per game average each season. He finished 6th in the Heisman Trophy voting, was also a consensus All-American, and was selected to the All-SEC first team. Entering his junior season, Fournette was expected to contend for the Heisman Trophy, as one of the preseason favorites to win the award, but during the scrimmage, Fournette sustained a high ankle sprain that would bother him the whole season. Fournette would eventually re-injure that ankle in 2 separate games. In his first game back, Fournette rushed for 284 yards and 3 touchdowns against Ole Miss to set a new single-game school record for rushing yards. His school record was later surpassed in that season by Darius Geis by 1 yard. He finished his junior season with 843 yards and 8 touchdowns in 7 games. After that season, Fournette declared for the NFL draft. Coming out of college, Fournette was highly touted as a top 10 pick in the upcoming draft and was ranked as the 3rd best prospect going to the NFL Combine. He arrived at the NFL Combine weighing in at 240 pounds, which was heavier than his playing weight in college, but that didn't matter, as he still ran a 4.5 40-yard dash, which was extremely impressive at his size. The Jaguars would eventually select Fournette with the 4th overall pick. He made his regular season debut against the Houston Texans, and he didn't disappoint. He rushed for 100 yards and a touchdown on 26 carries. His best performance came in Week 5 against the Pittsburgh Steelers. Fournette had 181 yards rushing, including a Jaguars franchise record 90-yard run in the 4th quarter, and 2 touchdowns. In 13 games, Fournette finished his rookie year with over 1,000 yards and 9 rushing touchdowns. As a rookie, he was already recognized as one of the top backs in the league. He was even ranked 58 by his peers on the NFL Top 100 Players list. Heading into year 2, everyone thought he would have a big year like he did his sophomore year at LSU, but that didn't happen. Fournette injured his hamstring in the season opener versus the Giants. That injury would cause him to miss half the season, as he only played in 8 games. He would end up having a terrible year as he only rushed for 439 yards that season. He averaged 3.3 yards per carry. The highlight of this season was his fight against Buffalo Bill Shaq Lawson. In year 3, he returned to the Leonard Fournette we all knew. During Week 4 against the Denver Broncos, Fournette rushed for 225 yards, making the first time in his NFL career that he had rushed for over 200 yards in a single game. Fournette had his best season, as he had rushed for over 1,100 yards, but he also proved he could be a receiving threat, as he finished with 76 receptions for 522 receiving yards. It seemed Fournette was going to have a good career, but things started to go downhill, as he was shockingly released heading into year 4. Head coach Doug Marrone stated they had other backs on the team that could replace Fournette. He was eventually picked up by the Buccaneers. I mean, going from Blake Bortles to Tom Brady isn't bad at all, but Fournette would be number 2 on the depth chart. as the Bucs already had their starting running back in Ronald Jones, who got the majority of the carries. But Fournette proved his worth during their Super Bowl run. He had a total of 448 yards and 4 touchdowns during the playoffs, which earned him the nickname Playoff Lenny. He was a huge piece that led to them winning the Super Bowl. He would end up spending 2 more years with the Bucs. In his second year, him and Ronald Jones basically split carries, but he was still able to have over 800 rushing yards and 454 receiving yards. Fournette wasn't the same player as he once was at this point of his career, but he was still able to give you solid production. Heading into year 3 with the Bucs, it was obvious that he was near the end of his career, as he only averaged 3.5 yards a carry and rushed for 668 yards, but was still a good receiving threat. The Buccaneers didn't re-sign Fournette, and he was still looking for another home yet again. This time the Buffalo Bills picked up the veteran running back, where he only appeared in 2 games for them and spent the majority of his time on the practice squad. Following his short stint with the Buffalo Bills, Fournette is now a free agent heading to the 2024 season, and at this point, it seems his career is likely over. Although he didn't live up to the hype, he was still able to play with one of the greatest players of all time and won a Super Bowl with him.